Do you want to learn how to get healthy, perform at your best, and create body composition changes that last? In this podcast, we're going to talk about all things fitness, nutrition, health, and mindset. You're going to learn how to create real results, and most importantly, how to maintain those results in the long run. I'm Johannes.
I'm Kristine, and
you're listening to Talking Nutrition.
Hello. Welcome to the No Name Podcast.
Not yet.
We haven't picked a name yet, so
we're working on it. Yeah. I think by the time we launch this, we'll actually have a name for it.
Right. This is a good little learning experience for newer coaches too. Is like, just jump in. You don't need to have everything ready. Just do it.
Yes.
You know,
not even just coaches, like clients too, right? Like being okay with taking imperfect action. Like that's really what it comes down to, you know? Right. So here we are taking imperfect action.
We're here. We'll get there. The hardest part for us is the name. We can't figure one out.
Hardest part is getting started. We just did that already. So
right.
We'll think of a good one. By the time this launches, we'll actually have an actual name. So
Right. So this is obviously our intro episode. So we're just going to tell you a little bit about who we are, what to expect from this podcast. And we'll finish off with some tips on how to handle, the summer season and help you stay on track a little bit better. So if you don't know, I'm Kristine and this is
Johannes.
Johannes.
Nice to meet you guys.
So me and Johan started talking. We did Sam Miller's mentorship together, and we had no idea who each other were. He knew who I was just from CrossFit, right? Like the CrossFit stuff. And we just started chatting, and, we've gotten really close as far as like our businesses together, helping each other. So we were like, let's start a podcast.
Yeah, let's do it together.
Yeah. Heck yeah. A little bit about me for those who don't know. A little bit of a background. Sometimes I don't know where to start. I'm like, I could write a book. I could write a book. When I was younger, I was a competitive gymnast, got into soccer, taekwondo. I was always very, very active as a youngin'. And then I found CrossFit, and that took over my life for like 12 years. And I got very competitive in CrossFit. Games level, but never actually made it to the games. There's just a bunch of stuff, a lot of injury, hormonal stuff. I was points away from the games, but just didn't get there. But throughout my CrossFit career, like I said, I went through a lot of injury. Blew my Achilles, then on the regional floor, blew both my shoulders. And that kind of took me down a really long recovery road of recovering from that, as well as a lot of hormonal stuff. And that kind of triggered me into what I do now, helping people. I thought I was going to help athletes, get through injury, all that kind of just performance nutrition. But I ended up kind of going down this road of like helping women and men, with hormonal health, getting their cycles back, just optimizing their hormones, as well as, helping people improve their relationship with food. I have a diverse group of nutrition clients, but I find myself in that area the most. So I've been a nutrition coach for about 5 years, I think. Like I did it for free for a while, and then I actually started the business. And it's been fantastic. Like I just love it, and how much I can help people and create, a sustainable life as far as nutrition and training.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit about me. I actually also come from CrossFit in a way. CrossFit did a lot for me in terms of fat loss. So where you were like into performance, for me 10 years ago, I was not working out at all. I was about 110 kilos. So like, let's say 230 pounds, I think. Not a lot of muscle. So, it's a little chunky. But anyway, So 10 years ago, I started working out, ended up having this moment where I was like, I got to do something. Like I felt like shit. I looked like shit, I thought. And I just had to do something. So I really started to figure out my nutrition for myself, which, I mean, was not easy in the beginning. I tried a bunch of stuff that, I usually call bullshit in these cases.
Same.
Anything from I did like this juice cleanse, like the supplements, like the fat burners, like all this stuff, that we talk a lot about. I tried all that to just, figure out like how can I actually lose weight and keep it off too,
Right.
Did like my fitness pal. I was like, hey, you know what? Maximum weight loss, great. 1,200 calories, cool.
Oh gosh.
Didn't last for very long, but so I tried a lot of stuff and then eventually I figured it out. And that was really when I started in CrossFit in 2014, I think. My coach back then was great. He really helped me actually get into nutrition, really dial it in a little. I started tracking. And then over time, I really figured out like how to do that. So fast forward to 2018, I think it was, I actually became a CrossFit coach, which is how I got into actual coaching. Before that, I did a whole bunch of other stuff. I was a Northern Lights guide for a little while. I've been in music, so I used to tour a lot as well. But eventually I became a coach.
So sweet. You got to check out his Instagram.
I just started doing that again too. I just rejoined the band actually, which we'll talk about in an episode, I think. But so that's what led to me becoming a coach. I was really into training, right? I really liked CrossFit and the community aspect and getting healthier, getting fitter. And what was cool is that at least most people don't really care about the weight or the looks, or maybe to a certain extent. But it's really about like getting healthy, getting fit, getting strong, performance focused. And that's really what I think is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I also saw a huge gap between still, like compared to 10 years ago, when I tried to figure it out, there's nothing that has changed. I mean, social media has changed, but the shitty information that's out there is the exact same.
Yep.
And that's nuts because with so much information right now, we should kind of know how to do this, right? But that's not the case.
Right.
So I saw people like myself trying all this stuff that doesn't really work in the long run. And then, what they should be doing. And there's a huge gap between that. And because I know that nutrition just did so much for me personally, I was like, hey, you know what? I want to do this. I want to help people get healthy. So just like you, I got into this because I'm passionate about that, right? I want to get people healthy, fit, etc. And this is really where I think it's kind of cool, and we're pretty similar. Sure, like you kind of work with more performance kind of focused clients sometimes, right? Or in general, even though it's mixed. For me, it's kind of more jam pop, I guess, in general. I have some like jujitsu people as well and CrossFitters, but in general, it's mostly weight loss.
Yeah.
So the clients we work with are maybe a little different, but our approaches are very similar, I think.
Very. Mm-hmm.
And that's really why we click, I think, right? Because we really want to work on sustainable results, like not just getting someone to a lower weight, but actually teaching them how to keep this off in the long run,
right?
How to get strong, etc.
Yeah.
Which is also how we met, with that mentorship. So here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Like my journey with CrossFit, I mean, when I was in that, I guess you could say like I had some knowledge. I mean, I had the tail end of my CrossFit career. I had a nutrition coach who was fantastic. I was with him for a long, long time. But prior to that, it was a disaster, and like under eating significantly. There was that paleo time, all that, which
did you do zone?
Yeah, I did the zone.
Yeah, me too.
I did paleo, I did the zone. And we know that paleo doesn't mix well with CrossFit type training. But I also got wound up with just some different companies that don't feed their athletes essentially. And so I was under eating significantly, overtraining, like to a pretty big degree, like I was in the gym, 6 hours, a day doing 2 sessions. Like it was stupid, but like I thought that's what I had to do. And I got, really lost in the hype, and it came crashing down on me, and it sucked. Like it was like really hard for me for a lot of years. But I certainly wouldn't be where I am today without going through all that, like for real. It's like the foundation of why I do what I do. So yeah, I'm very passionate about helping. Yeah, I do help athletes. But the thing is it's not just athletes, like top athletes that are in that position. Actually, it's usually not. They're actually smarter these days. It's like Gen Pop who thinks that they have to be like eating 1,200 calories and training 5 hours a day, right? So it ended up being, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this isn't just, these top athletes like myself back then going through stuff like this. It's just like the Gen Pop who just have such a distorted I guess, view on what they think they need to be doing. Yeah. And so that's, again, like a lot of people that I help, even people not in CrossFit. Like I was thinking about this the other day. It's almost like the people with, I guess you could say unhealthy relationships with food are in the fitness industry, which would think it would be the opposite. Like, there are people outside the fitness industry that need some help in that area. But a lot of it is in the fitness industry because there's so many opinions out there. And then influencers, all of that. It's just an abundance of information. And it's just crazy to think like most of it to me, I see with people in the fitness industry, which is, it
which
sucks.
is a good point, because I do see the same thing as well, and it's really worldwide, right? Like you live in Canada, I'm in Norway, it's the same shit.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
And I just want to go back a little because you mentioned, hey, overtraining, doing too much. I feel like every CrossFitter kind of goes through that, where you get really into it, you get really passionate, you really want, like you think, games and shit. Which, you actually got close. I never did. But I still had that idea, like, hey, maybe one day, And what do? You start to train more and more. And you got to do like the second session and the third one. And you got to do the pre-work and the after, whatever, But people don't look at the sleep and the food and the boring stuff that will actually let them recover.
Yes.
And I see that everywhere. And honestly, when I was starting my coaching business, and this is a couple of years ago now, like 2.5, once I started that, I was very busy. I was pretty stressed in general. I was working hard. I was doing a lot of training, but I didn't necessarily take care of myself, which is kind of funny because I'm like, here I am, like helping people get healthy, lose weight, etc. But my own health kind of suffers. Now, I was doing a lot of work, not sleeping enough, generally, more stressed. And I would work all day, go to CrossFit, go as hard as I could, coach CrossFit, and then sleep too little, and then again. And at some point, it just burned out. It just ended up being too much, and I really hit a wall. And I remember that moment too. We're doing like heavy cleaning jerks, and everything hurt, and my body was just messed up, and I just had to stop. I told the coach, like, yo, I'm good for today. And then I didn't train for 2 months straight. I just really got in a weird spot. But anyway, my point here being, like, a lot of people go through that, where it's like you get very excited, you end up doing too much. At one point, honestly, I was going around the gym and saying hi to people, and it wasn't like, hey, how are you doing? Like, yeah, I'm good. It was always like, hey, how are you? And it was like, yeah, I'm good, but my shoulder's messed up. Hey, I'm good, but my back is a whole mess,
Right.
And you start to see people are under recovering just time and time again.
Well, what the thing is that people, someone like yourself, you have a job, right? These other people have children. They have babies. They have all of these other life stressors happening, and they forget that these games athletes, that's all they do.
That's what they do. They sleep,
most of them. Their life is revolved around that. That's all they're doing. Usually they're not working, right? They've got these sponsors that are paying them and all of that. And people forget that. They just forget that they have, a handful of stressors, and it just compiles and compiles and compiles, and that's when you get injured.
Yeah.
So
I feel like we should touch back on this as well and really talk about stress management and the other things really that play a role and are sometimes even more important than food and exercise, right? Yeah. So let's actually go back a little and let's actually tell people what to expect from this podcast. Right?
I'm just going to say that this is a good segue into
That's a good segue to what to expect. Yeah. So yeah, main topics, right? Fat loss, muscle gain, performance, health, but really anything health and fitness, right? So stress management, hormones, sleep,
Yeah.
a couple tips and tricks. Like we'll be bringing guests on in the future, doing Q&As. Anything else you want to add there?
Well, I was saying nothing is really off the table. You know, we're going to have like we're going to have a question box where you guys can put topics in that you want to hear us touch on. I mean, I'm always down to talk about whatever. Doesn't have to, we're, fitness and nutrition focused, but we can always add in some other stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Definitely. I think it'd be cool to just talk about some personal stuff too anyway, so people know who we are.
Yeah.
I'd love to share some stuff about music because that's really changed my life, like as much as nutrition,
So cool.
And just in general, like we'll kind of see, we'll wing it in the beginning. We'll see what resonates with us the most, and it's kind of sick. And also what people think is important to learn about.
Right. So to cap things off, we will talk a little bit. We'll touch on some things that we think can help you stay on track a little bit better during this summer season, kind of because it can be a little bit tough. So I think one of the most important things is having some sort of plan. Even in the summer weeks or summer season, people typically have structure, during the week because they're working, right? So that's normally not like a huge issue, but again, it's like the weekends or like barbecues pop up or events or like 4th of July just happen, things like that. So my advice is to have some non-negotiables and create some sort of plan to have some sort of structure, right? I have a few written down here. So 1 workout session on the weekend, just do 1. Like you don't have to do 2, do 1. Starting your day with a healthy breakfast, right? A lot of people tend to like want to skip meals or skip breakfast. And then that ends up backfiring at the end of the day. If they have an event or something, now they're like ravaging, they're like so hungry, they want to eat everything. So you start your day with a good, healthy breakfast. Both of those things, so like movement and that breakfast, can put you in a good mindset for the rest of the day, right? Or, just focus on, if you're not going to work out, have a non-negotiable of, 8 to 10K steps a day. That way you're getting in some movement. That way, like, even if you have 1 or you have 3, you can walk away from the weekend feeling like, you win, right? You stuck to your goal, you stuck to your non-negotiables, you feel good. You can just get back into, the week easily. Having some sort of plan, doesn't have to be anything crazy, but it's going to help with that structure.
Totally. I think it's just good to remember too, like the stuff that we brought up in the beginning, like taking imperfect action.
Yeah.
Summer and this, like it's mentioned, 4th of July, Christmas, like, over here, Easter is pretty big in Norway. Like there's always going to be those moments where people struggle. And why is that? Well, the lack of structure all of a sudden is different. And that's the thing, right? What do people worry about? Meals that are not in control because someone else is cooking.
Yeah.
You don't know what's on the menu. You go to a different place. You don't know what's going on. This is something I went through last month, right? I'm still in a weight loss phase, currently week 16. I came home lighter and I was on tour for 3 weeks. So for 3 weeks, no days off, like just shows, different cities, different countries. Not a single meal was within my control, right? Like I just had to see what was available. So what I did do was just rely on my habits. And that's my first point. A lot of the stuff that you are going to have to rely on is the stuff that you've been doing at home. There's the easy stuff, that's when you're sticking to your usual schedule and whatever. That's when you can really learn new habits. Then when you're away, when it's summer or whatever, you're going to have to rely on those habits that you've been creating. So a couple of habits there. Protein. I made sure that I always had some protein sources, whether that was protein powder, bars, etc., or at least protein with every meal, right?
Yep.
That's also something that you wrote down, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Because that's most satiated macronutrient.
Yeah,
like
I was just going to say
keep you
that.
full.
Yeah. the other one I had, so I did have protein at every meal. Like he just said, it's going to help keep you full, right? So if you're having just like a carb source, you're going to be hungry pretty soon after, right? And then this can lead to overconsumption overall. Whereas like if you focus on protein at every meal, you're just going to be full longer. It's going to help keep those calories in check. For my people who do track their calories, I have two. So there's something called calorie cycling where you can essentially have a higher, if you have an event, you can have a higher day or two, depends, where like you would drop your calories during the week. And then that would leave you more room for extra calories on the weekend. There's some people, I don't suggest doing this, but it just, it's something I did want to bring up because it can help just have a little bit more flexibility when you do have an event like that. Another thing that I do personally, when I do know I'm going to be going out for dinner or like have an event, there is an option in Chronometer where you can quick add, right? So I will sit down in the morning and I will, you type in quick add in the search menu and it'll come up calories, protein, carbs, fats. And I put in, say, 1,000 calories, 1,200 calories for that specific meal that I'm going to have out, because we know restaurant meals are a lot of calories usually. So I'll put that in at the beginning of the day and then I will eat around that. So I will, so I'm keeping my calories way more in control that way versus eating, throughout the day. And then all of a sudden I have like no calories left. Right. So it can just be helpful for those who are tracking to essentially pre-log that. That way you're accounting for it at the beginning of the day and you can eat around it.
Love it. I think that's huge. And I think the pre-planning is so big because that's really when you don't run into that, right? Where you have to make up for your calories or eventually like at the end of the day, like you're way over your fats, but no protein.
Yeah.
If you do it beforehand, you know what's going to come up, you know how to plan your day around it. And it's even going to just give you that feeling of being in control, knowing how to be flexible.
Yes.
And I think that planning aspect is something that we should all just kind of like try to learn at least.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be huge for those moments. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Which really comes down to those habits as well. That's what I was doing. I start my day with a breakfast. Like you said, I start with a good breakfast. I get the protein in. What I also wanted to add was those, fruits and veggies. I made sure that I had 2 of each every single day. Non-negotiable, 2 pieces of fruit, 2 servings of veggies, like, fist-sized portions. It's pretty simple. Like, I think we sometimes like overcomplicate things, but it's pretty easy to hit your fruits and veggies, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, this is a big one too, is I stuck to no calorie or, low calorie drinks and then preferably carbonated drinks.
Yes.
There's a lot of shit on, like artificial sweeteners and stuff, but diet sodas are totally cool to drink. Unless you drink like liters a day,
Yeah.
But those really kept me on track. Like I said, I lost weight, even though it was difficult, social settings. To give you an idea, like on tour, there's something called the after show pizza. And that's when the show is done. Backstage, there's a stack of pizza. That's hard when you want to lose weight.
I bet. Yeah.
But I did pretty good. Like sometimes I went for it, but that was a conscious decision. And that's my next point as well. I tracked my calories on most days and protein, most days. And then on the days I didn't, I just aimed for more like an intuitive maintenance kind of day where I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go a little over. I'm going to try to stick to maintenance. And I'm pretty good with that because I've been tracking for so long. And I'm just going to be okay with that. Right. But it's a decision you make because it could slow down your progress. And that's cool too, because summer is really not deep time to be very diligent. But in my case, like, hey, we do have to rely on a bit of willpower and say, hey, you know what? This is my goal. This is what I got to do to reach my goal. And I'm going to just make the right decisions most of the time.
Right.
And then if it's slower, that's okay.
That reminds me of one I wanted to touch on. I'm kind of adding to this, but
that's cool.
Another one I see often, and like this is for summer. Yeah. But these can really go for any time, to be honest.
Yeah.
a big one again I see is like people trying to be so perfect during the week. And they like don't have anything they enjoy. They don't have any fun foods. Then the weekend comes and there's the barbecues and it's like, like I want everything now because I've just restricted so badly during the week. Right. So you need to stop restricting so badly during the week, incorporate some of those fun foods during the week. And that comes down to, willpower too, right? Like you enable yourself to actually use the willpower when you need it. And Cody was talking about this just recently on his Instagram. You'll have way less desire to go crazy when these foods are in front of you if you are a little bit more flexible, during the week. And I work on this a lot with clients. I see it all the time. So that's a big one too, is stop restricting so much during the week and trying to be perfect, because it's only backfiring, on the weekend when 100%. You consume 4,000 calories.
Oh yeah.
Right. So,
which by the way, 4,000 is still an achievement too.
Yeah.
You really have to do your best for that.
Yeah. It's very easy to consume a lot of calories. People don't realize it. They're like, 3,000 calories, that's a lot of food. I'm like, well, you could get there really quickly.
Oh yeah. If you do your best, yeah.
Yeah. So
no, I think we'll probably talk about that a lot too on this podcast because we're pretty big on flexible dieting, you and me both. And with that like 80-20 rule, that we always follow, it's much easier to kind of stick to it, be flexible, but still be consistent, right? Yeah. Also not allow yourself to get too flexible either. But like that way we don't have to follow a strict diet or whatever, and that's why I personally don't do meal plans. That's why I don't say, hey, these are the foods that you need to eat. We'll guide people, obviously, and we'll guide, the listeners as well. But we're not going to say, hey, you know what? You need to eat these 5 fat loss foods or whatever, because it doesn't work that way.
No.
Which is also something I want to add maybe is that it's like why I don't do like a day of eating, Maybe one day I will, but like, I kind of want to not do it just for the fact that people might think, hey, this is like a special diet, or whatever,
Yeah.
Or I have to eat these foods, but like, no, you don't have to.
Right.
You can include anything, but the context always matters.
Yeah. Those who enjoy, some drinks, I think this is a good one to touch on this summer because usually drinks are flowing more. Something I do with my clients is like, again, we do like a non-negotiable of how many you're going to have or like, and what's realistic. So like I have a client who, he drinks quite a bit and we're working on reducing that. So if he has like 10 drinks, he usually has 10 drinks and he knocks that down in his non-negotiables 2, that's not going to be realistic for him. Right. Yeah. So knock it down. If you normally have 10 drinks, make a non-negotiable of 8. Right? If you're going to have 2 events, you have 2 social gatherings in one weekend, are you maybe non-negotiable? Okay, I drink one night, I drink the other. Or you split the non-negotiable of drinks between the 2, days. Yeah. So it's not both days, you're over consuming. These types of things can help as well. Again, you're going in with some sort of plan. It's also good to tell someone, so that they can keep you accountable that you're going with, your wife, your partner, whoever. That one for booze, because those calories add up very, very quickly.
Oh, a lot. And that's maybe something a lot of people don't know, or I know that a lot of people don't know that. And that's alcohol is 7 calories per gram. That's almost double compared to protein and carbs. This is something I hear a lot. It's like, I went for, the whatever drink, alcoholic drink, but I went for the low carb option. Like, that's cool. Yeah. It helps. But the vast majority of those calories are going to come from alcohol. You know?
Right.
So it's a very good point, actually, that you brought up alcohol, because we do want to limit that. Hey, it's cool to have a drink. 100%. Yeah. I have a lot of clients who drink every weekend or, every other weekend, whatever. But it's context, right? Yeah. Like getting drunk every day, probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Every now and then, hey, it's fine, right?
Yeah. And the booze adds up, but then you're like, ooh, I'm buzzed and I got the munchies.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, And then it's the food. It's like a cascade effect. That it's the sleep. We could do a whole podcast on this.
Oh yeah, we should definitely.
But that's just something I think is important because people, even myself, like I like to enjoy, a couple of drinks here and there. But you got to put a limit somewhere.
Yeah, fair enough.
Cool. What do you think? That's good. Love it.
I think that's
first
good
one in the books.
First one's in the books.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. We plan on one a week?
Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to be launching a new episode every Monday morning, probably Central European time. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Once every week. We're going to think of a name.
If you have any suggestions, let us know.
This will already be up, though.
Yeah. Oh, true.
True. So let's set that as our goal, right? Yeah. This week, we're going to come up with a name. New episode every Monday. See you guys next week.
All
right. See you then.
Peace.
Thank you for listening. If you want to help us grow the show, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or share this episode on your Instagram stories. Now, if at any point you feel like you need more help, you can always reach out to Kristine or myself directly via any of the links in our show notes, because we're here to help. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.